Members, I've been working all morning here to try to get your Wi-Fi back up. I finally talked to some folks at Patriot Mobile. We provided this Wi-Fi to the committee members as a service for y'all. We tried to warn you guys not to share that information. Unfortunately, that router was preloaded with 50 gigs worth of data, and you all burned it up yesterday. But I do agree. You are the only committee to have done that, and the only way that that was possible is if somebody was live streaming on it, because that's a large amount of data. So the bad news is I do not have Wi-Fi for y'all anymore, and I'm sorry about that. Them's are the breaks, as they say.
So the backup plan is tethering or something of that nature, like we did in San Antonio 6 years ago.
And do things that way, but I do not have Wi-Fi for you anymore.
So we broke the internet?
We broke. Yes.
Used it up.
You broke the internet.
But at least we didn't delete the Second Amendment.
Can we wait till Wednesday?
We're safe.
I got it in front of me right now.
There you go. Exactly. Don't hit the. You can. I'm gonna hit the button.
I'll make it stronger.
Right. Oh, there you go.
I'll add tank.
Probably. I don't know. Look, I used to get in trouble at work.
Hey, Justin. Justin.
Certainly.
I want you to do.
We finished up. We've run out of time on 44, but I'm advised there is one minor amendment that should not take any additional time, any significant additional time. If y'all recall, we had an amendment earlier that was going to make the, I believe it's a section B1, and was going to change that to simply Rule 44 to take care of, I believe it was Dwayne's concerns at the time. Before we take a final vote as amended on 44, I believe Kristen has that short amendment to expand the indemnification to Rule 44 and not just limited to that one section of Rule 44. So, Kristen.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members. So I rise to make an amendment to 44B, and what we want to do is just make simple change. We want to remove section A1 and replace it with Rule 44. And what this does is it indemnifies our county chairs. That's really important that they have that in there. It's a very simple provision. Based on the changes to the language that we made, we need to also make this change as well.
Second.
Can you please put that up on the screen? So this was the
Yes.
point of information.
Yeah.
Mike Snyder, SD9. Point of information, this was the one that was proposed earlier about just changing this so that it covers the
So it
entire
would be
rule,
Rule
right?
44.
All right, very well, thank you.
It's been discussed, but I think we ended up ruling it not germane or something like that. I don't remember the details.
And now that the other passed, this is extremely important that we put this in there. We do not want to set our county chairs up for lawsuits. We definitely want to make sure very clear in the language that they are indemnified in the rule in its entirety.
Okay, thank you, Kristen. Do we have a second?
Second.
Dwayne seconds. I think we've discussed this enough. Are y'all ready for the vote?
Let's vote.
David, real quick.
Point of information, I guess. David Westbrook, SD19.
I can't hear you.
Point of information for the author, I suppose. Does this also need to change with regards to lawsuit? Because lawsuit, it sounded like we were going to be opening up chairs to possible criminal prosecution as well, some of the changes we made. Does that need to be included? Is lawsuit and criminal synonymous?
So, if the lady would yield, I'd be happy to respond. So, there's no indemnification is a contractual provision. I contractually agree or agree by rule or some declaration that I will cover whatever you may be responsible for in the event of a civil suit or liability. There's no concept under the law, and I know I'll be corrected if I'm wrong, of indemnifying someone for a crime. In other words, I can't say, go steal the candy bar and I'll take the rap for you. The law doesn't necessarily allow that. Whether or not any of this would impose criminal liability, I don't think is something that we can control here. But the answer is no, this rule would not, nor could any rule, indemnify for criminal liability.
Okay, good question, David. Any others? Are we ready to vote on this? All in favor of expanding the indemnification to the full Rule 44 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes, unanimous, maybe one of our first unanimous votes. Okay, that brings us to the question on the as amended Rule 44.
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment.
Time has expired for debate on Rule 44.
Can we extend?
Since this is all of Rule 44, we'll take a roll call vote before somebody requests one. And we're adopting Rule 44 as amended in order to move on to our next agenda order of business item.
Can we extend
Point of
debate?
information,
Can we extend debate? There's several people that still had amendments.
we can extend debate by a majority vote.
Okay?
Do I hear a motion to extend
So
debate?
move to extend debate by a majority vote.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. We extend debate. I'm going to throw out a clarifying question, friendly amendment by 10 minutes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all in favor of extending debate 10 minutes, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
Nay!
The nays have it. That brings us back to the Rule 44 as amended vote. And as mentioned, I believe this is one of those significant votes that we should have a roll call vote on. So if Mike could do the roll call vote. Oh, and it has been sent out over the Signal network, apparently, the as amended language, if you don't have a copy already.
Kristen Bentley.
Yes.
Randy Dunning. Yes.
You can use it, you can actually access it on your phone there, Ken,
Mac Duncan.
Yes.
even while you're tethered. Just hit,
John Boucher.
Yes.
you have signal.
Dwayne Wright.
No.
Well, you don't if you've not downloaded.
Keith Nielsen.
If you downloaded it, so you need to download.
Russell Rush.
Yes.
Ken Leonard.
Yes.
Mike Snyder.
Yes.
Susan Valiant. Dave Wilson.
Yes.
Ronnie Jones.
Yes.
Rachel Hooper. Eric Opiella.
No.
Josh Flynn. Nate Joy.
Yes.
Caleb Piatto. Sandra Pint. Sandra. Not here. David Westbrook.
Nope.
Chuck Burnett. Kathy Hagler.
Yes.
Leslie Thomas.
Yes.
Rick Cook.
Yes.
Bruce Campbell.
Yes.
Naomi Nervez.
Yes.
Justin Nichols.
Yes.
Suzanne Guggenheim.
Yes.
Tim Lambert.
Yes.
Brooks Coleman.
Yes.
Mark Russell. Brandon Hodges.
I had to tie into my phone.
The vote by the chair's count is, and show the chair voting in the affirmative, is 24 ayes, 7 nays, and 1 abstention. So 44 passes as amended. This doesn't mean it's finally passed. We could reopen debate on Wednesday for a limited amount of time, and of course on Thursday night when we're in permanent session. So thank you, members. Do we have any delegates that wish to testify at this point? That was next on our agenda. Wonder if we do have a request by Virgil Cruz as one of the former chairs to address us.
Motion.
Yes.
Motion to have him.
Motion to have Virgil Cruz. Oh, there he is, right there. Okay. Please welcome Virgil, Secretary of the Party, former chair. Give me a big welcome.
Thank you. I didn't expect that much of a welcome, but appreciate you. I see so many faces that I recognize on this committee. I asked the chair's indulgence to have a few minutes with y'all. I sent a memo to y'all by email with kind of a laundry list, I would call it, of mostly technical sort of cleanup items. There were 18 of them, and I'm going to propose a 19th. So I thought I'd go through them really quickly as I could, since you did get a copy of it by email. I know it, volume of email, you may not have seen it. So if you have that email, I can reference that. So I went in just in order. So beginning with Rule 8, I'm suggesting a change to the title of the rule, just to reflect the content of the rule better, as the rule changed a lot over the years. And of course, Rule 8 grows every year. So we want to make sure that the title is reflective of the actual function of the rule. Number 2, very simple. I'm a fan of serial commas, Oxford commas, and I missed 3 of them in edit last time, so that's my confession. I would ask that we clean those up. One of them is in Rule 9. Number 3, there is a single and/or in the rules. There used to be 6 of them. And we pulled those out, I think, 2 years ago or 4 years ago. And I'm looking at Kathy Hagler because she has been very helpful to me in post-rules cleanup before we published the document. There was one and/or that I thought was substantive, and so we didn't touch it. And I'm suggesting to change in Rule 16, the end of Rule 16 to say, instead of debate and/or amendment, to say rather debate or amendment as appropriate. I thought that would clarify it. And then number 4 on my laundry list is regarding committee reports and the 10-minute requirement that they'd be delivered within that time span. And I'm asking that we add a phrase, not including the time required to read the report, because if you live in a large county, for instance, that has a nominations report that's 300 names, a lot of times you need more than 10 minutes. So the 10 minutes would just be a limit on comments by the chair on the report. Number 5 is a serial comma, pretty simple in Rule 20. Number 6 that I'm suggesting is also in Rule 20, and it's a clarification to something that I think when you organize your SD and county conventions that brings a lot of trouble. And credentials committees always approach and ask about, well, what does it mean time of election to be eligible? Does that mean the election or the election at a precinct convention to an SD or an SD to a state, for instance? And so I'm suggesting that we add a phrase at the end of it so that the sentence would read, must have fulfilled the requirement of party affiliation at the time of election, adding the following words, which occurs when a convention approves delegates to the next higher level convention from that precinct, senatorial district, or county. And that phrasing mirrors actually some language that's further down in the rule, so it just copies and pastes the phrasing. Number 7 is a mostly grammatical clarification to Rule 22. The current version on A4 under Rule 22 says, all resolutions adopted or not adopted. And if you do paperwork from your conventions, you know there's an exhibit for resolutions adopted and resolutions not adopted. And so I'm suggesting that for clarification that we say all resolutions adding the word whether adopted or not adopted. Very simple correction. Number 8 on my laundry list is a serial comma and a title. I hope that's non-controversial. Number 9 has to do with when there are changes to voting precinct lines and how gubernatorial vote is split among them. Right now, we have a deadline in Rule 23, capital A, under D4, that says that if the county executive committee fails to act before the first day of candidate filing, I know some large counties, especially Harris County among them, that was too early. And so I'm suggesting, just as a possibility, I'm open to other possibilities, but to strike first and insert last day of candidate filing. Continuing. Number 10 on my laundry list has to do with some long language that we added, I believe, 3 years ago in the SREC in part of emergency changes to rules, and that was having to do with precinct boundaries that didn't change by that deadline, voting precinct lines. And so the SREC had to create this new rule that said the SREC could step in and draw do those apportionments for those counties that had not finished their voting precinct lines in time. And I thought that the language was, to be frank, sloppy and kind of one-off. And so either we should fix it, or because it's so long and we don't know what the next decennial census is going to do, that's quite a ways away, maybe perhaps just strike all of that new language. So I gave you a starting point in D4 under 23 capital A. Number 11, 2 years ago, the Rules Committee and the convention affirmed it, added for what I would call a mid-sized convention, county or SD convention, added, and Howard Barker is not here, but locally we called it the Howard Barker rule because we have 8 SDs in Harris County, and Howard Barker's SD 18 Harris County sliver fell into this provision that between 25 and 50 delegates, we asked that rather than having a committee of 5, that they had a committee that had a minimum of 3 people, or actually, yes, a minimum of 3 people. However, we only added that for permanent committees, and I thought, well, why can't they do it in temporary too? So that is a substantive change, but I think it makes sense. The rules seem to not have any problems from what I heard in its application for the first time around this time for those medium-sized conventions, so I'm suggesting that we make that change to Rule 29. Rule 32, under my number 12 change, just a change to the title of the rule because it's called Certified List of Delegates, but it really has to do more generally with convention records. So I would ask that this committee consider that change. Okay, under number 13 on my list, which is part of Rule 33, a couple changes to how we talk about the organization committee at the state convention. And it's always been confusing. I went back and looked at the history of the organization committee, and we used to actually have a committee of temporary organization and then a permanent organization committee. So the temporary committee would nominate officers for the SREC to approve while the state convention was in temporary organization. And then they would have to run in caucus. They would come back and meet that Thursday night with the other permanent committees and then recommend permanent officers of the convention. Well, your convention needs to get organized on Thursday, on the first day. And so they made that change, I want to say, about 10 years ago. I'm looking at Hagler because she remembers those sorts of abstruse things like I do. But I think the phrase that I'm adding would be, rather than saying this committee shall recommend permanent organization, I'm going to say, or I would suggest saying, this committee, while still under temporary organization, shall also recommend the permanent organization to the convention for consideration, another 2 words that I'm suggesting we add. So I think that clarifies it because people are always like, well, is there a permanent organization committee or just a temporary organization committee? Well, they're called the organization committee because they recommend the temporary and the permanent organization, and that gets confusing for people. So hopefully this change would clarify. And I hope I'm not taking too much time, Mr. Chair. I'm trying to go pretty quickly
You're
here.
fine.
Under my number 14, actually, the state party parliamentarian and I, Stephen Bolin, we discussed this, and some other people, that if you look at Roberts, if you look at how conventions happen, normally, once you elect your permanent chair, that permanent chair appoints permanent officers, correct? And strangely enough, in our Rule 34, we say, and of course, at state convention, the state chairman names the temporary chairs of committees. However, if for whatever reason your state chair is not running again, or you have someone other than the state chair who is the permanent chair of the convention, which used to happen, I understand, in the even in the early 2000s, I believe. Yeah. You would want that permanent convention chair to be the one to name the chairman of the permanent committees, right? If the strange thing would be if you had a mutiny, right? If your convention elected a new permanent chair, I think the convention would want that person to select the permanent committee chairs rather than someone who may have one foot out the door or is not running the convention or has been pushed out to be the permanent chair. So striking state chairman as the person who would make those appointments and replace it with permanent chair is my suggestion.
That was in 34.
That is in Rule 34, correct. Also in Rule 34, just a simple addition, we say, no one may edit, add to, or edit the legislative priorities after state convention sine die. I think we should add the word adjourns before that, just for simple clarification. Moving on to my number 16. We have a lot of candidates for chair and vice chair this time, if anybody noticed, right? The consequence of that, if you've worked with the convention planning team, is that it's a nightmare. And it's a nightmare because the production tomorrow, or Thursday, has to do speaking times for people. So talking to people, I don't know that it would be an undue burden, and this is definitely substantive, it's not just grammatical, but I would ask the committee to give some thought to this, that rather than having a deadline, this committee has considered supplementals that would put the deadline in 1 hour before the general session, if I'm not mistaken, on Thursday to file for chair and vice chair. If you're running for chair or vice chair of this party, I don't think it would be an undue burden to ask a few days' notice. And I would suggest 10. That may be, sure, you could have late entrance, but I think by the time you're at 10 days before a convention, you're already pretty late. So my add language that I would submit to your consideration would say, to be eligible, this is in Rule 41, by the way, to be eligible, candidates for the office of state chairman or vice chairman shall be required to file a statement of intent to run with the SREC secretary at least 10 days prior to the first general session of the state convention. So that would be, again, a deadline for filing before convention rather than one that's going to happen 2 days from now at 8 a.m. Okay, rounding the corner for home here. Under my number 17, many of you may remember that we added a new provision in Rule 42 at the last convention, and that provision was that SREC members, at the time of their election, and then subsequently when they are elected to the SREC, that they disclose whether or not they receive compensation from elected officials, registered lobbyists, or political action committees. So we applied that on the SREC for the first time. Actually, I was the one to collect those documents from people as SREC secretary, and all we could put on there is yes, no. That may be helpful, but I think this committee may want to consider going a step further, and the suggested phrasing that I add at both stages, both the disclosure at convention and the disclosure later when elected to the SREC, would be, and when applicable, shall disclose the sources of the compensation. I don't think that that's an unfair thing, and if you're going to have a rule that asks whether or not people receive compensation, I think it's appropriate to ask where they receive that compensation from. So that is in Rule 42. Rule 43A is the only rule in the current RPT rules, general rules, without a title. So I think it should have one, and I'm suggesting platform principles. That's Rule 43, capital A. And then finally, you had an 18 on the memo that I sent you on Sunday. I actually thought of a 19th one on the drive here talking to an SREC member, and the question from the SREC member was, can I live stream or record in congressional and senatorial district caucuses? Well, if you look at Rule 14, which is the open meeting rule for conventions, and you'll forgive me for reading from papers, if you get that joke. Right now, it says, all meetings of any convention, committee, or subcommittee, whether it be a temporary or permanent organization, shall be open to any delegate, and then it talks about right for them to record and live stream. So I think a clarification may be called for here, and you don't have the wording, so I can give it to somebody, or somebody who's quick at writing could do it perhaps. I would suggest in that after subcommittee to insert including meetings of senatorial and congressional district caucuses, comma. So after subcommittee, comma, insert including meetings of senatorial and congressional district caucuses. So that would be added to Rule 14 is my suggestion. So I want to thank the committee for indulging me a rather lengthy amount of time to talk through this laundry list, and I want to thank you for your work. I've been on this committee before and see a number of faces that I had the privilege of working with, so appreciate your work. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Thank you. Yes.
would it be appropriate to adopt 1 through 15, the non-substantive changes right now?
It's up to the committee. Yeah.
I move that we adopt 1 through 15, the non-substantive changes.
Been moved and seconded that we adopt the non-substantive changes that are numbered 1 through 15 in Virgil's letter to us. Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Carries. Second unanimous vote of the week.
No, you got a nay.
Somebody stuck in a no.
Oh, we got a nay?
Yeah,
Sorry, Virgil, we got one.
And Mr. Chair, may I step down? Or
Sorry?
may I step down, or shall I remain for questions?
Does anybody have any other questions?
Just one question, Virgil. On 14A, it says all meetings of any convention. Wouldn't that cover the caucus meetings?
I think it does, and the suggested addition, and I don't claim to be certain about this, but I think the fact that the question arose is like, okay, does that include caucuses? We could state it, or you could say, well, it says what it says. So I don't think it's absolutely required that we add the words, but it may be helpful to somebody.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, point of information. Over here.
There we go. Over here, Ronnie.
On these substantive changes, do we just need to hang on to these notes for whenever we get to that particular rule?
Correct. Just because those aren't in Rule 8, which is what we're taking up next. Okay, before we move on to Rule 8, do we have any delegate testimony at this point in the room? Yes, Kathy?
Mr. Chairman, so
amendment that Virgil wanted us to do to number 14, just to add that phrase, that was not included in what we voted on, correct?
That was not included. It was through 15.
So could I make a motion to add to Rule 15 the phrase including meetings of senatorial and congressional district caucuses, as he suggested?
If the committee would vote 50% to go out of the order of business, yes, that would be okay. So we have a motion on the floor to take this one item, which is Virgil's item 19, dispose of that currently out of our order and before we get back to Rule 8. Is that correct, Ms. Hagler? Yes, sir.
Do we have
a second? Have a second? Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
It passes, sorry. We're taking it out of order. That's what the vote was. Okay, now, do we have discussion on adoption or rejection of this? Now, Leslie.
Well, I'll let Kathy speak to it first.
I just wanted to do what Virgil was trying to accomplish, that's all.
Yes, Leslie.
I apologize. I thought we were voting for the correction, not the taking it out of order. I'm totally against this. Things happen in our caucus that we don't want on YouTube. And just think about it. It's a caucus. You should be able to act freely. You should be able to discuss things and the candidates. Just think about what happens in your caucus, in your memory, and would you want that on YouTube preserved in perpetuum? So I'm really against this.
Okay, we've had 1 for, 1 against. Do we have another for? Rachel?
Rachel Hooper, ST13. Can we get some order and can we get on the screen what we're talking about? I mean, I heard
Page 9.
Virgil's presentation, but I would like us to get order and all be on the same page.
These haven't been typed in.
We're going to have to tether one of the computers.
I'm just looking at the rule we're working on.
Those of you that have got a copy, 14.
In the first sentence.
He's wrong. They're both the same. They're both the same.
Here, look at your internet. You can see mine.
All of these. This is
So my understanding is it's on 14B at the, yeah, on B, and we would be adding in the words. I'm sorry, 14A. Stand corrected. We'd be adding the words, including meetings of senatorial and congressional district caucuses.
Where are you, Kathy?
As I say, I'm already. Well, if you can sync to yours, that's your next best thing.
Yes, Virgil, where
You
you
have
want
a charge cable, you can plug it into your USB. and phone charge.
it would be after the word subcommittee.
That's what I'm doing with mine.
After the word subcommittee.
Right at the top.
And the words are including meetings of senatorial and congressional district caucuses, period. Congressional district caucuses.
Well, then use mine, because otherwise you'll run out of battery.
Comma, after caucuses, comma. And then it'll continue whether.
So let's try that again.
That's your intent, Virgil? Okay. Okay, we've had one for, one against. Rachel brought us back to order. Do we have any others for or against?
Sandra Kent, SD18, I'm speaking for this amendment. It just adds clarity, doesn't take anything away, and I don't think anything we do in caucus we should be ashamed of. If we are, then we shouldn't be here.
Okay, do we have any other opposition?
Mr. Chairman, over here.
Oh, I thought,
I'm
sorry, I thought Dwayne was next on,
Right.
against it.
Right. Dwayne Wright, SD5. I'm against it because it's redundant. It says all meetings. There's no need to keep we could sit there and add all kinds of sub meetings and everything we want. It says, literally says all meetings in A and in B as well.
Okay, somebody over here for? Any others against? Okay, Dave?
Dave Wilson, SD11. I'm speaking against this motion for the reason that if you look in the fifth line of A, we exempt proceedings of the nominations committee. Typically, that's because personal details are being discussed about candidates. It's kind of like an executive session. And in caucuses, et cetera, when we're electing people, it's kind of like an executive session as well. So for that reason, I'll be voting against.
Okay, we're ready to vote? All in favor of inserting the Virgil Cruz language, 14A, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay.
Nay.
I think the nays had it, actually. Okay. Thank you nonetheless, Virgil, for all the input. Okay, where are we? Yeah, but okay, do I have a motion to take up consideration of Rule 8?
I move to take up consideration of Rule 8.
Okay, it's been moved. We have a second. Okay, we're taking up Rule 8, which is third of our big rocks. Do we have any amendments to the current Rule 8? John?
Yes, do we want to go in order, or does it matter if we start on
One at a time. Try to keep them compact enough to be germane, not too compound, that sort of thing.
I emailed of Rule 8.
C or E?
I emailed you just some substitute.
Did you send it to me too, John?
Yes, I did. I believe I sent it to. And I would like to speak in favor of the substitute.
Okay, John, you address the amendment?
Yes. Rule 8E would allow the county chair to be elected by the executive committee at the organizational meeting. Plank 248 of, may I speak in favor now? Is that going? May I go on now and speak in favor?
Yes, please.
Okay. Plank 248 of the Republican Party of Texas, labeled Republican Party Operations, says we support the election of the Republican county chairs by the respective county executive committee where they exist, and we support removing the Republican Party of Texas from the election code. TEC 171022 already allows the county executive committee to elect the chair under certain provisions within the Texas Election Code and does not affect the statutory responsibilities of a county chair, no matter how the chair was put in office. The county chair performs about 22 statutory duties on behalf of and as the head of the county executive committee. Boards of directors elect their own board presidents, and that accountability is vital to the organization if it's going to operate efficiently, just as we're going to elect a state chair here. According to Chairman Rinaldi, there was about 40 counties across Texas that were having issues with rogue chairs who were defying the will of the executive committees that they were chairing. And this is really hurting our party and our state. Closing the primaries alone will not fix the problem of rogue chairs because aside from Democrats wanting to harm the party, there's also outside money being pumped into certain counties because they are trying to buy county chair races across Texas. And when this happens, that county chair then serves the interests of those people who finance their campaign rather than the CEC they serve or the people who elected them. And when those rogue chairs disrupt the party and go against the will of the majority of the county executive committee, we end up with this gray area sandwiched between the Texas Election Code and RPT rules. This gray area I'm referring to is where the courts are reticent to act because they view this as an inter-party conflict, as exclusively this is a party matter. And at the same time, the RPT is reticent to act because the RPT rules might be construed as inconsistent with the TEC. And in that gray area, you often find scrupulous people who would threaten to drag the party into courts and entangle them in very costly litigation simply because the party wants to enforce their party rules. But then when they get before the courts, they argue that the courts have no standing because this is a private party matter. So that's the gray area. So having the county chair elected by the CEC, or at least letting the CEC decide how their county chair is elected, would eliminate much of the contentiousness and allow the party to focus on more important things like electing Republicans and keeping Texas red instead of these inter-party conflicts which exhaust party resources and exasperate our volunteers. Thank you.
Okay, do we have anyone wishing to speak against this rule? And this is substitute the current language, is that correct, John? Okay. Yes, Eric.
Mr. Chairman, Eric Opiella, SD 14. So this was tried in Illinois and struck down in a very similar case, Graves versus Cook County Republican Party in 2020. The issue here is that the election code specifies certain public tasks dealing with public office, such as the running of the primary, et cetera. All of those tasks are done by a county chair that is elected at the primary. The court in that case held that, and it recognized this whole freedom of association argument that's being argued, but held that the bylaw change, in that case in Illinois, impermissibly and unconstitutionally burdened the citizens' fundamental right to vote because this was an elected office. And so I think it's unlikely that this would be upheld, and if so, it would have to be narrowly tailored to have this person that's elected at this county executive committee meeting be the presiding officer of the county executive committee, and then the person who's elected at the primary would be the one tasked with the statutory tasks that are assigned to the county chair that is designated by the voters of the Republican Party in the primary election. I think it would create confusion among the voters because you have now two different people, a speaker perhaps of the county executive committee, and then a county chair who is the chief executive of the or in terms of doing the statutory duties that are assigned to the county chair. Moreover, there are certain bank accounts that are assigned to the county chair by the election code that this wouldn't affect. So I speak against because I think it would probably create mass confusion, and again, like many of the other changes proposed today, create litigation. There was, I dealt with this in Bandera County this last election cycle. And in that case, they purported to have a person appointed as a precinct chair when someone had been elected in the primary. The county attorney successfully executed what's called a writ of quo warranto against that purported precinct chair, and fined that purported precinct chair as part of the quo warranto proceeding because they were not the one that was elected by the voters in the primary. So I'm opposed to this.
Okay, we've had 1 for, 1 against.
Point of information.
4. Point of information, Kathy?
I just want to understand from the author, if you would, the organization is called by 1/4 or 50 of the precinct chairman. So you're in Harris County. What if 50 people call it for one day and 50 people call it for another day and 50 people call it for another day? How do you know which meeting to go to since there's no one person in charge of calling the meeting? How does that work?
Thank you for your question. That was the original language. I didn't change that language at all. That was the original language. It says call.
Hey, hang on a second until the mic's working.
That's not the original. The original language says the county chair.
That's,
Just got to hold my finger just right. It originally said by the county chair or by that language that you're seeing, 1/4 or 50 of the precinct chairman, whichever is fewer. So I don't see what the problem is there really by written demand.
okay, for the amendment, Rachel?
Yes, Rachel Hooper, SD 13. In Texas, what we have, because that's where we are, so in Texas, I don't know if you're aware, but over the last few years, we've had a lot of what I'm going to call uniparty establishment people who have tried to run things. And then we've had conservative grassroots people who have tried to, who are interfered with by the establishment, my opinion. And so this is a problem throughout the state. We also have county chairmen who either don't do their job or actively working to undermine, not all, we have some great, but actively working to undermine the grassroots. For example, Mr. Boucher's county has had a heck of a time over the last 2 years and has had to be in the court system. It's a mess. And so, unfortunately, my negative here is this isn't redlined. So I think that more people would be for this if this was actually redlined, because Mr. Boucher's suggested language is actually already in the rule. So the current draft of the rule as implemented is the county chair has the first opportunity to call the meeting, but if the county chair does not call the meeting within 45 days, then this is the fallback provision. So I do support what Mr. Boucher is doing here, because I think in reality, in Texas, in practice, we need to get a hold of what's going on in our county parties.
Point of information.
Yes.
Is there a way to get a red line document? Because it really is.
Well, this was presented as a substitute, not on a red line.
I know, but a lot of the language is so similar. So typically when we see a substitute, it's almost like the whole thing. Well, it's sort of hard. It's just difficult to differentiate the changes.
Could we quickly get highlights or something of what the differences are? I think that might help the members.
Mr. Chair, I've got a point of information I could probably help stall for a little bit.
Okay, yes, Ronnie. Sorry, I don't see you out of my corner of my eye.
So kind of a generic question, because I see a kind of a glaring loophole in this situation, to where when a chair is elected in the primary, they get to kind of start building their team with the
It would effectively, eventually, because you have a timing issue right now. If you pass this now, this is for this biennium, correct? So it's for the coming biennium. Well, the primaries already happened, and so nobody has a time machine. But this has to start somewhere, and it has to be in the rules in order to go, again, we'll have people argue before this party that this is not legislation, as we've already heard. But then eventually they'll go to the legislature and say it's not in the party rules. We have to fix this problem. We can't have 40 chairs across the state defying the will of the body. That's not republicanism. It's a problem, and it's getting worse. So this is step one, just as we've done with rules previous, that we have to address as a body and have the courage to do what we need to do to protect and preserve the. The ultimate goal is to let the county executive committee, just as a board of directors would do, pick the person that's going to run the operation. That's correct. That's correct. And again, I would point out again, somebody brought up the objection that saying that the county the county chair is elected in the primary and their statutory duties. That's true. 171.022 says the county chair is elected in the primary or appointed by the county executive committee as provided in the subsection. So it's already in the law. It doesn't obviate the need for those statutory duties to be done because they were appointed as a county chair by the county executive committee. It's still the same thing.
Could I make a suggestion to the members? We're coming up on about an hour right after lunch. No objection. I think perhaps we could take a 10-minute stand at ease while the secretaries get the highlighted red line version, if you will, up on the screen. So hopefully that's 10 minutes, but we'll come back into order when that's done. Do a quick bathroom break or something.
It is what I mean. And I'd like to speak to my motion.
Okay, so we have a second.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded, an amendment to the amendment. So, Rachel.
I believe that we have a lot of variety within our county parties. And I believe that county parties should be able to choose the best way to select their county chair. Some people would like to select the county chair in the primary election. Some people would like to select the county chair in their county executive committees. This rule would give the county executive committees the choice. And that's the purpose of this amendment.
Yes, I saw David first. I'm not positive he was first. I saw him first.
David Westbrook, SD19. I would speak against this. It's a basic violation of equal fairness under the law to allow this not to stand. It has to be the same everywhere. It cannot be different by county unless the law says it can be. But even then, it's questionable whether the courts would let that stand.
Okay, for the amendment, to the amendment. Yes, ma'am.
I think this is more of a informational. Are we saying that when the voters vote in the primary and vote somebody in as a county chair, that we will allow the party to say to the voter that their vote doesn't matter? Is that what we're saying here?
That was not the way I interpreted it.
Okay, that was how I interpreted it.
Would you like to address that, Rachel?
Point of order, is there a second?
Yes, there was a second.
There's a second. No, that's not what I mean at all. No. I respect the voters. I love the voters. But what we're hearing across the state is where I am from, Houston, Harris County is different than other counties. And what I'm saying is, so if you read the previous sentence, it says the county executive committee can adopt their bylaws and rules. Well, so if they can do that, why can't they choose the manner in which the county chair is elected?
May I respond to that?
No.
Very briefly.
Sure.
The bylaws are for how the party operates. They don't have anything to do with the vote per se. And I understand Harris County has issues, but this is still, in my opinion, it's thwarting the will of the voter.
Okay, we're back for supporting Rachel's amendment. Mr. Dunning, did you have your hand up? Oh, no, I'm sorry. Dwayne? No, for it. Anybody else for the amendment? Yes, Suzanne. She's against it.
I'm against.
Gotcha. Okay. You can speak for Rachel's.
Just thinking, okay. We did hear in the break that some people were concerned that they wanted the choice. And we also understand the timing issue. So this would give time to make the transition, and it would also give each county a choice on how they wanted to select the person who's going to do the statutory duties on behalf of the party. The precinct chairs would still be elected by the people, so it's not taking anyone's representative government away. They're the ones closest to the people, that in their neighborhood they know, like, and trust their constituents. I don't think it's ridiculous to allow them to pick the person that's doing the statutory duties on behalf of the county executive committee.
Okay. You're against now?
No, Mr. Chair, no, absolutely not. I would just, point of information, is the chair advised as to platform plank 248 saying we support the election of Republican county chairs by their respective county executive committees where they exist?
I believe that's what Mr. Boucher referenced when he was putting this forth in the first place. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Ken Leonard, SD8. I want to remind everyone we're a grassroots party. And because there's a problem in Harris County, someone told me that 25% of legislation in Austin is to straighten up a mess in Harris County. This same rule cannot apply to smaller counties. There are county chairs that stack the deck on the executive committee, and they will show up with a stack of applications right at the filing deadline and literally hostile take over the executive committee, and they can do whatever they want to. This, if we leave it the way it is, it leaves it in the hands of the voters, and that's what we're about, is being a grassroots party, and I'm not going to vote to change that.
Dwayne?
Yes, I'd like to speak against this. So what we're proposing here, and we talk about representation, and this is true, the precinct chairs represent a precinct. But what we're saying here is that we want some of the precinct chairs who represent some of the precincts in an entire county to pick the county chair that represents the entire county. Because the county chair is on the county election board and the county election commission. They vote that affects the way the operation of the elections is in that entire county. They represent the Republicans in the entire county, not just the majority of the Republicans in that county. So if we're going to be a party of the grassroots and we're going to represent the people that we worked so hard to lock up our primaries, then we certainly should understand the basics of of the representation and the way it falls to the county chair. We can't expect some of the people to choose something that covers all of the other Republicans in that entire county.
Okay, we're a little lopsided on the nose right now. We've got any others wanting to speak for this? Ready for a vote? Okay, we're voting on Rachel's amendment only, not John Boucher's amendment. That is, I understand it from Rachel's comments, it would give us a transition time, and it would give county executive committees a choice as to which of the two systems they would do.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Mark Russell, SD30. A point of information. If we have closed primaries and the election of the county chair has taken place at the time of the primary election, what's the point of this amendment?
Well, that's the reason for going to 2026, so that there's time to work out a transition.
But why would a transition be needed? That would be Republicans that are voting the county chair. And I'm not trying to debate it. I have a serious question about that.
Yeah, I understand. I'm not advised. Okay, into the vote. All in favor of the amendment to the amendment, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Nay. Somebody in the gallery likes the nays have it. Okay, that moves us back to the original motion.
Order. Point of order. Sorry. I appreciate the confirmation by the audience, but I think as it gets closer with more people here, it's really going to be disruptive, and I think it'd be better if we didn't have the audience making an outburst, because it could get really bad. And it's either side, so I mean,
Point
you could
well
be on one
taken.
way or the other.
Point well taken, especially tomorrow and in permanent. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Any further discussion on the main amendment? Yes, sir.
Clarify exactly what we're voting on, Ron?
We're voting on the red-lined version, the changes that John's amendment made to the original Rule 8E. that effectively would let county executive committees select the county chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Did I summarize that correctly?
Projector needs to be updated and take the pink writing out.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Are we available for a point of order? Not a point of order, but a point of information?
Sure, sure.
We are asking again, I want to make sure I understand this, that it would be to the discretion of a county executive committee. They would, to decide who would be the next county chair. Is that correct?
That's the way I understand.
Okay, I urge my fellow members to vote this down. We are disenfranchising our voters in a very gross way here. And I think that we need to pay attention to the statements that have been made, but that we are a grassroots organization. We cannot take the power out of the hands, as difficult as the situation may be. We cannot remove the power from the hands of the grassroots.
Okay.
Turn the other mic on.
Yeah, yeah.
Microsoft, the other mic on in front of the green shirt.
That would be a typographical.
Mr.
Okay,
Chairman?
we ready for the vote? Oh, Brandon.
Brandon Hodges, SDC 31, point of information. What I'd like, Midland County, I just want to throw this out there. We've got about 96,000 registered voters, and we've got 45 precincts that make up our little county election. And we can't even fill all of our precinct chairs. So if this was approved, which I'm absolutely against, what was it? I did the math. 1/10,000th of 1% would be choosing our county judge in Midland County, and I do not think that's representative of the total electorate in my county. So I urge people to vote against this. Might work for big boys, but not for us.
That was a little more than a point of information, but okay. Okay, all in favor of adopting this amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Nay. Do we need a roll call? No, the nays have it, of course. Okay, I believe Nate had the ear of the chair next.
I have a motion to amend Rule 8K as sent over. 8K being the removal of county chairman.
K is in king, right?
King.
Our military leader over here.
No, that's C.
Oh, I'm getting tired.
Air traffic control, there you go.
Sleepy.
Would you like to speak to your amendment?
Certainly. The proposed amendment will codify, simplify, and clarify the process of removing a rogue or derelict county chair, precinct chair, holding our local leadership responsible for their actions.
Thank you for making that bigger.
I understand. There's got to be a balance in this somewhere. There are road county chairs, and we gotta address them. Yeah, sure. Six or seven people. That's the question. Let's see what his suggestion is here. Can we get that on the page? Still didn't. That's what that is. I think it's the official time suck. I'd be okay with that if it was the SREC. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think they're not gonna make it. No, he's recommending.
Well, it gives specific categories. Can you show us the very top, please? Of that, well, there you go.
That's right.
Point of information from the author, please.
Yes, sir.
Mike Snyder, SD9. When you say recommend the removal of the county chair or precinct chair for reasons including, but not all-inclusive, that list is not all-inclusive, is that correct?
That's correct.
So it could be a number of other reasons besides these that could be stated for removal.
Correct.
Very well, thank you.
Under the definition of failure of leadership.
Yes, sir, Mac?
After the word including, you could put comma, but not limited to.
There you go.
I would accept that.
Okay.
I like that. Yeah, that clears it.
Can you scroll down, please? Thank you.
Point of information. Ron Jones, SD12. Does this overlap 8N? Should we
It
address
does
that
not,
discussing?
because it does not codify the removal.
Because it says a precinct chair, county chairman, and Rule 8N as well.
But that's just for dereliction of duty.
Right, but your list includes a lot of that.
Correct.
So just to clarify, your intent to change 8K to 8K1 and 8K2?
The intention is to codify how to remove a precinct chair or county chair.
Another point of information, please, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Mike Snyder, SD9. When we're talking about how to come up with a new chair after you remove one that is in error and you're wanting to get rid of, are we saying that the executive committee is going to temporarily fill that vacancy? Or is that person who is going to fill that vacancy serve that term out until the next election? This goes to the author.
I believe the intention is per the election by the CEC, or the, I guess it'd be a.
So the CEC, if I may continue with my question to the author, so the CEC would then be responsible for appointing a chair or electing a chair until that would serve in that capacity until the next election of the people. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
And I believe that's the way we do it currently, if there's a vacancy, right? Dwayne?
I moved to amend, Dwayne Wright, SD5. I moved to amend by striking D, failure of leadership, from that list, and I'll speak to my motion.
Well, We've already started discussion. Technically, we don't need it, but who was the second for Nate's? Did we have a second for that? For Nate's amendment in yellow. Okay, we got seconds for it. Now we have an amendment to the amendment to strike D. We have a second for that.
I will take that as a friendly amendment.
You'll take that as a friendly amendment, okay? Done. Okay. Anybody want to speak against this amendment? Eric?
Mr. Chairman, I fail to see how substantively this is different than what we just voted down overwhelmingly. It's in a different rule, but under this, you could immediately upon having your organizational meeting with a quorum present, vote to remove the chair for any reason, because it's including but not limited to, and then have a group of people who are not elected by anyone, which would be in their county especially, the officials committee of the SREC, then purport to remove someone and get you right back to where you were with the last amendment we just voted down. So I'm opposed to this because it totally undermines, in an even worse way, the vote of the grassroots in your county. Because now you're having people from outside of your county decide that you're not going to have this person as your county chair forever, because they're no longer eligible for consideration as a precinct chair or county chair. In so many ways, beyond the fact that it conflicts with Section 122.029 of the Election Code, but I guess people, it's just a bad idea overall, and I encourage people to vote against it.
Yes, Kristen.
Kristen Bentley, SD1. This is totally different than what we just voted down. This is not the CEC electing the chairman. This is the CEC having a tool in case they have a county chair that meets any of those in A, B, C, or D, including being completely inactive and not holding meetings for 2 years. There has to be a remedy, some sort of remedy in situations like that, and that happens. It's all too common. And so this has a process that can be followed, that has checks and balances, that is fair. And I would encourage everyone to vote in favor of this, because our county executive committees, our precinct chairs who have a county chair who has completely abandoned their duty need some sort of remedy, aside from having to wait 2 years and try and get somebody else elected. And it's just not at all, I mean, I just can't believe it is not at all like the other amendment.
Okay, anybody else against the amendment?
Point of information, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Did we vote on removing D, the leadership?
It was taken as a friendly amendment.
Can we have it as shown as stricken and not taken out?
It's done though at this point. We could amend to put it back as, but.
But we didn't vote
No.
on it yet.
No.
We don't have to vote.
We don't require that on friendly amendment.
And then I have one other question too, is
Quickly.
that I would like to see where the SREC is not the final vote. It should be the executive committees that have the final vote of removal, and the SREC should be just the like the mediators, observers to the conflict that is occurring, and they can make recommendations, but not the decision maker of that county's executive committee.
Leslie, were you actually speaking against? Okay.
Leslie Thomas, SD22, I rise in opposition. In Rule K, there's provisions to remove a county chair if they're derelict of duty. In Rule in, there are provisions to remove a county chair if they have misconduct, including failure to perform statutory duties, failing to attend 2 consecutive meetings, embezzling county executive funds, being convicted of election fraud, and at least 3 other documented instances of sufficiently egregious conduct, and so forth. So I don't see the use in putting, oh, and one more thing. In these, it goes up to the SREC as the final vote. In this one, in number 2, it goes to the officials committee. And, I mean, I think the SREC is representing the whole state, the whole Republican Party. The officials committee is just a handful of people from the SREC, so it's less representative. So I urge you to vote this down and then just fix what we already have, which is pretty much what is there, except for going to the officials committee instead of the SREC.
Point of information.
Yes.
Could we please keep the screen where we can see what letter we're on? We can kind of tell where we're starting. I know we just did a big move, and thank you very much.
Point of information.
Yes.
I just want to ask the author. So C, ineligibility. If somebody's ineligible, it's automatically vacated, isn't it? Like if you move out of the county or you file for office, you don't have to remove anybody. It's automatically vacated, correct? Or am I wrong?
I think now with Rule 42, 6, 46, that may have a little bit different flavor.
Okay, any others for the amendment? Yes, Brandon? Oh. Okay, we ready to vote on the amendment?
Point
Yes,
of information.
Kristen?
So to Leslie's point, is this something that the author thinks is better maybe put in a different section rather than, is this too redundant to put it here?
I believe this is the appropriate place for this amendment.
Okay. All in favor of the amendment? We've had a couple of failed amendments to the amendment or friendly amendments, but everybody in favor of this amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? No. The nays have it. Thank you, members. Do we have any other amendments to 8? We are actually out of time, but we'll take one more.
This would not be H, but this would be an 8. Mr. Chairman.
Which subpoint are you on?
Sir?
Which letter are you on?
I'm going to start off with 8R. I would actually like to create a Rule 8R. And the secretary has it in a piece of paper also. It would say, number 1, every county chair in a county over 20,000 people shall call a CEC meeting every quarter. And number 2, every county chair with a population under 20,000 people shall call a CEC meeting twice a year, first half and second half.
Second.
I can support that. At least. That should
Further, I'd like to go ahead and just add this at 8E, under where it says county organization meeting, insert after it says executive committee members, insert the election of a secretary and vice chair if membership size allows.
Those are 2 different amendments.
They are 2 different things we can divide.
Let's stick to dividing it, keeping it on one paragraph at a time. 8R, every county chair in a county with a population over 20,000 shall call a CEC meeting every quarter. Every county chair in a population under 20,000 shall call a CEC meeting twice a year.
Mr. Chair, would the author entertain a friendly amendment?
Let's find out if it's friendly.
Could we insert at least every quarter and at least twice a year?
That's been accepted. I think that's in the scheme of things, so, and you do accept it? Okay.
I'd like to offer an amendment.
May I speak to the motion first?
Yes, you may.
There are several reasons I would like to see this become part of our rules. We've had, down in our very populous Southern County, we had a county chair didn't hold a CEC meeting for, well, as of today, since July of 2022. And this is a large county, so I think we kind of need to put a little put a little fire into the feet of some of our county chairs. I think this is actually good for the counties. I think it's good for the Republican Party of Texas. So that's the purpose of this, is to, I think it'll actually create more unity within the parties if they're meeting more often.
Okay. Any other comment? I think somebody had an amendment to that.
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I would like to strike the second line in 8R, and then strike with a population over 20,000, and just make it every county chair shall call a CEC meeting at least every quarter. I think when we want to grow our party and elect Republicans, then we need to have a county CEC and a county chair who holds quarterly meetings, at the very least. That is not too much to ask of an elected official who is tasked with growing our party. And we do have you're distracting when you start talking loud. It's out of order.
You're out of order.
Sorry,
Let's get back to the collegial atmosphere we've had most of the last 2 days. I'm not sure I heard a second on the original motion, but since discussion has begun, Roberts takes that as a second. So continue, Kristen.
I'm done. I just think that it's not too much to ask that we have at least 4 quarterly meetings.
Okay, so we've got an amendment to the amendment. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. I'd like to speak against the amendment to the amendment. The reason being, I have a county, Brooks County, that has a delegate strength of 2, only one town in the entire county. The only member of the executive committee is the county chair, and that's it. So to require her to hold 4 meetings a year by herself, I think would be unreasonable. I think 2 a year would be
Seems a lot easier.
would be okay, but I'm thinking of the little people, the little counties. I don't want to. I think that's why I put the limitations on population. If y'all want to tweak the 20,000 to 10,000 or something like, I have no problem with that. But these little bitty counties, I think that would be asking too much of them.
Point of information, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Dwayne Wright, SD5. What is this, as size allows of the membership, what does that mean?
We're not on that one yet.
No,
we're not on E, but
we're only
we're going
on R.
reverse alphabetical?
Only R, only R. So just a point of information from the chair. So at what level less than 20,000 would Kristen's amendment perhaps be more appropriate?
I'll leave that up to the body. I think we've got a reasonable group of people here.
Okay.
The 20,000 was the starting point.
Okay. Any other discussion on the amendment to the amendment?
Mr. Chairman.
We've got a lady in the back first, Suzanne. She had her hand up before I heard you, Dave.
That's all right.
I speak in favor of the amendment to the amendment. I think we don't rule for the exceptions, whether it's a good one or a bad one, whether it's Harris County or Brooks County, we rule for the majority of the cases, and exceptions are exception. That lady will just celebrate by herself her quarterly meeting, and or that gentleman. Thank you.
Okay, Dave?
Dave Wilson, SD11. I'm speaking against the amendment, although I agree with the spirit of it. We've had a county nearby that had problems with meetings being held, and at that point, the executive committee took it upon themselves to put in their bylaws that they should meet a certain number of times. And I think that's a better way to address it, especially because we don't have a wide-scale problem across the entire state of Texas. And I do think that that's the duty. You know, the county chair should do it, but if they don't, I think there are remedies available. Secondly, if you put this into the rules, there's actually no teeth in it whatsoever. If they don't hold the meetings, then what happens? So I'll be speaking against it. Thank you.
Okay, any others? We've had 2 for, 1 against. Any others? Well, we had, no, we've had 2 for, 2 against. Any others wishing to speak for or against? Seeing none, we're voting on the amendment to the amendment, which would make it a quarterly meeting all over the state. All in favor, instead of the division at 20,000. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Nay. The nays have it. That takes us back to the original amendment or original addition to Rule 8 that we've labeled 8R. Is there any further discussion on 8R? Seeing none, those in favor of 8R as presented signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition?
Nay.
The ayes have it. So, what?
Everyone's getting.
What do you? Okay, I'll try to do it in a more official Roberts. Do we need to revote? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Okay, I think we need to count. Put your hands high up in the air. This is a.
What was this vote for?
We're adding 8R back to the original motion.
Okay.
Okay, all in favor? The all opposed raise their hand. The ayes have it. Do we want to take up the other one to E now? That, I think, was your intent.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Mark Russell, SD30. I'd like to propose an amendment to 8A by replacing the word election with appointment. So it would read the appointment of a secretary and vice chair if the membership size allows. And I can speak to that in a moment.
Mr. Chair, point of order.
8 what was it again?
8E, yeah. That E that looks like an A to me. Right?
Aren't we in a division? We need to finish 8E first.
Can you maybe assist with them getting it on?
Yeah, my reason for proposing that amendment is that there are some places in our documentation.
Wait, hang on a second.
Sorry.
Where does this amendment go on?
We're
back to
replacing the word election with appointment of.
Point of order.
Yes.
Are we not on a divided question for Chuck on 8E?
We never did actually accept 8E, and I'm sorry, the microphone went to over here. We'll come back to Chuck. Yeah. Yes, sir. Okay, which letter are you in?
8E.
B is in boy?
As in, E is in Edward.
E is in Edward.
It's on the screen, sir.
He's amending 8E.
He just now said we're not on that. It's a brand new.
This is a different E, correct? A different amendment. You're not trying to do the same amendment that was on the screen now.
No. I'm offering an amendment to Chuck's amendment by replacing one word. And the reason is there are some places.
Okay.
It's a good reason.
I'm with you now.
Mr. Chairman?
Pardon me, members, I was confused about what you were offering. So if I can cut this through, and I think we're there, we're back to your Amendment 8E, which you have not spoken of yet, and you're going to want to amend his Amendment E. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Let's go back over here and let you speak to your amendment before we go forward.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The reason to put these two officers in there, I think it's wise to have a vice chair, but I think it's very wise to have a secretary. There's only two offices listed in the Texas Election Code in a CEC, and that's the chairman and then also the secretary. If there's a vacancy in office, the Texas Election Code states that the county secretary shall appoint a temporary chair to run the election meeting for a new county chairman. So it's a very important office. That's why I think it should be in there. I also think that it should be this office should be elected by everybody on the CEC. I don't think it should be appointed by the chairman. I think it's an office of the people of each county executive committee. Thank you.
Have they got that represented correctly?
Yes, sir, it looks correct. And if I could add a little bit more, the reason I put as size allows, going back to a county that only has 2 or 3 people, that there may not be a need for a vice chair or maybe even opportunity for a vice chair. But if a county is large enough to have a vice chair and especially a secretary, I think they should always do that.
Okay, now we come back to the amendment. Your amendment was replace election.
To replace the word election with the word appointment. And I would like to speak to my logic behind that.
Okay, let's clean up a couple of things. We got a little confused here. Do we have a second to the original amendment? Got a second? Do we have a second to the amendment to the amendment? Second. Second, okay. Now proceed.
There are, In the bylaws and other documents, it refers to the vice chair being appointed with the approval of the executive committee. And I happen to know a vice chair that's sort of in a squeeze because of that. And my plea is for consistency in our language. So it could go either way, and it would make a lick of difference to me. But I do believe there needs to be consistency. But back to the chair that I'm acquainted with, he was appointed, so he is not elected as a precinct chair, but he is appointed to be a vice chair. And the question is, does he have the right to vote in the executive committee? And the conclusion by 50% of the people would be he has no right to vote. And then the other part of the executive committee, the other 50%, finds fault with him because he didn't vote. So just trying to clean up the language is my only objective.
Okay, see, and that's not a friendly amendment, correct? Okay, so any further discussion on the amendment to the amendment? Yes, Dave.
I would like to speak against that. By putting in appointment, it suggests that the CEC may not be able to approve the appointment by the chair. That's what we currently have in our county, and that's a problem. In our county, the county chair can appoint all of the committee chairs, can appoint the executive team, vice chair, et cetera, with no approval by the CEC. This is something that needs to be addressed in bylaws typically. Even though I'd like to see something else there, the fact that it says appointment draws concern for me. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Anybody for the amendment to the amendment? Seeing none, all in favor of the amendment to the amendment to replace election with appointment, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposing, nay.
Nay.
Opinion of the chair, the nays have it. Back to the original amendment. I saw Leslie's hand first.
Mr. Chair, I move to amend to strike vice chair and vice chair, and I'd like to speak to my motion. But first, I need a second. Second. Okay. So a lot of counties don't have vice chairs. Dallas has vice chairs sometimes. Sometimes they don't. They have like an executive officer. So that would make a county that's not used to operating that way to operate that way. So and in rural counties, they don't always have vice chairs either.
So you want to leave secretary in but remove vice chair? Okay. We've got an amendment to the amendment. It was seconded. Any further discussion? We're out of time. I would remind the members, all in favor of the amendment to the amendment, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Nay. The nays meekly have it.
The nays rise in ambivalence.
The amendment to the amendment fails. That puts us back on the main amendment. Yes, Kathy.
SD 21, Kathy Hagler. I would just like to speak against the whole amendment because some counties elect, some counties appoint, some they have a requirement that they must be a CEC member or they don't have to be a CEC member. Each county gets to address it by their own bylaws, and I would just rather leave it up to each county to do their bylaws and not tell them how they need to do it through the rule.
Okay, do we have any others before we close this out and vote on the affirmative on this?
How about a point of information, or can I get a question? Josh Flynn, SD15, sorry.
Yes, Josh.
Are we required to elect a secretary at the organization meeting anyway?
Not advised.
Because, I mean, that's a statutory position. I mean, the county organization appoints a secretary, and then they immediately get elected as a permanent secretary. So I'm not sure that this is even at all needed. But that's what I was wondering, if somebody knows if it's already required by the election code.
I'm not advised on that.
Sandy Kent?
Wait, one,
Oh, go ahead.
go ahead, John.
Yes, sir, thank you. Mr. Chairman, I just think this is wise to, if at all possible, to have a secretary and a vice chair. I think it's just good for all the county parties, but notice it does say as membership size allows. This is still up to each CEC to make these decisions. So, but if they do have enough people to have a secretary and a vice chair, I just think it's healthy for the parties.
Okay, one last, Sandy.
Sandy Kent, SD 18. Yes, Josh, 171.025. It does state that the secretary of the county executive committee will be the one in charge of, in case you lose a county chairman. So they are mentioned in the code. You were there? Oh, that's right.
Point of information.
Yes, sir.
Do you know, Mike Snyder, SD9, do you know if it is a, excuse me, if it's a statutory position? Secretary is?
Yes.
Very well, thank you.
So what this would do then was make it be an elected position? Not necessarily?
No, sir. It would be elected or appointed. It depends upon the county bylaws.
Well, but this.
That's why Kathy's speaking against it, because each bylaws in each county can be just a little different.
I understand, but this would make it elected.
Correct.
If we approve
Correct.
this. Correct.
And then we'd have to change our bylaws.
Some counties might have to do that, right? Okay, we're ready to vote. All in favor of the amendment shown on the screen in yellow signify by saying aye. All opposed say nay. Nays have it. Okay, we are out of time on this.
Mr. Chair, I move to extend time.
I sent in an amendment over the signal to Rule 8.
I move to extend time.
It's been moved to extend time. I'll assume that's 10 minutes as we've done before. All in favor of extending time by 10 minutes, say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Nay. The nays have it. Sorry. That brings us back to Rule 8 adoption as amended. All in favor of Rule 8 adoption as amended signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Nay. I think we need a hand count again. If we do not, I need some parliamentary help on this. If we do not re-adopt some form of 8, does it go away completely, or do we simply eliminate the amendments on 8?
I believe we already adopted 22 as the starting template, subject to amendments. So I think we've already adopted the existing rules and then are going about amending each one by one.
I don't recall it being that way, actually.
Oh.
We put it on the table to adopt.
I may be mistaken. That was my recollection.
Okay, let's have a show of hands. All in favor of?
Are we voting on the amendment now?
No, the amendment has failed. We're voting on final for the temporary committee adoption of Rule 8. Okay. All in favor of Rule 8 as amended at this point, raise your hand.
With confidence. Just vote with confidence. Oh, you're voting.
All opposed, raise your hand. Vote was 27-3. Rule 8, as amended, is adopted. That puts us at another hour. How far are we? Oh, we're a long ways away from our third meal. Let's take a 15-minute break while y'all discuss what amendments need to start coming up now. And remember, we're going to take the remaining rules in reverse order. Thank you, members. Oh, die.
It's an element of surprise.
Thank you.